Welcome back to a new episode of Passion for Technology, the podcast from EPD Electronic. Great to have you with us.
Welcome to the Passion for Technology podcast. Climate change is an undeniable reality, and all sectors must work towards decarbonization, driving the need for innovative solutions. A concept gaining attention is the all-electric society, which envisions a carbon-neutral and sustainable world where energy production and consumption are primarily electric. This vision has the potential to revolutionize both the economy and society. But how feasible is this all-electric future, and what will it require to achieve? Today, we will explore these questions with our returning guest, Karl Lehnhoff, Director of the Industrial, Scientific and Medical segment at EBV Electronic. Hi, Karl.
Good morning, Mustafa.
Karl, on a personal level, what fascinates you about the idea of an all-electric society?
And for me, the fascination is the vision of a better and more sustainable future. And I think this will drive new developments and innovation.
Karl, the fascination is understandable, but how realistic do you think is that the all-electric society will come to pass? If you look at the current demand figures for heat pumps and electric cars, consumers don't seem to be on board yet.
I think it's quite realistic. There are different drivers in place. And I think when we look from the technology point of view, everything is doable. So to release all-electric society. And on the other hand, we have maybe to work a little bit on the economy and on the political conditions. But nevertheless, in the European government, we have already some regulation in place, and not only for heat pumps or e-vehicles. Also for industry is the discussion in the moment about the Net Zero Industry Act. And everything behind is our goal to reduce the CO2 emission towards neutral climate by 2050. And in Europe, we also put in place a goal in between for 2030. So we decided to reduce the net greenhouse gases at least by 55%. So in the moment, the situation is there are a lot of regulation in place in Europe, in Brussels, but now we have to bring that to national laws. And this is something what we have to bring to everybody, to the consumers.
So, Karl, that's the regulatory landscape. What will it take to convince consumers?
Yeah, I think the point is that the consumers normally, they have an awareness of environmental point of view. But we have to explain them a little bit more what we have to change and how we have to change it and what would be the economy influence. And I think then we can convince the consumers more. And I think this is something what our politics has to do. I think they have to think in the direction the consumers are not stupid. If you explain it in the right manner, they will understand it. And I think we have to take them with us.
Karl, what do you see as the core elements of an all-electric society?
The major point is that we get rid of everything which is, let's say, energy coming from oil, gas, and others what we burn. So we have to reduce the CO2 emission. That means we have to do an electrification for all systems. The point should be also then that the electricity should be coming out of renewable sources. So like wind, like photovoltaic or biogas, whatever. And also an important element is we have to find ways to store the renewable energy, to use it when we need to use it. And to do that, I think one of the most important backbones out of my view from the technology point of view is the communication between the different components or areas, however you would like to call it. So we have to know when energy is needed and where, and from where it will come, so where it will be stored. You can imagine then that communication is really the backbone, and some people are called that the IoT. Yes, we can use IoT for that. That's something like that. Anyhow, I would say it's communication. It should be IP-based communication in between, which makes it easier to communicate between all participants in the technology point of view.
And Karl, what economic impact do you expect from the transition to an all-electric society? How can businesses and consumers benefit?
I believe there are different benefits for sure. So when we look to business areas, the benefit is to have new markets, to do cost savings, and the opportunity for innovations. When we look towards the consumers, we can expect lower energy costs in future. We improve the quality of life, and we have an opportunity to live more sustainably. So one important point is we have to have the willingness to adapt this, to implement all this stuff. And what we have to do is we have to do investments for new technologies. And what we need is we need support from the government.
Apart from support from the government, what technologies are still needed to make an all-electric society a reality, Karl?
So from the technology point of view, I believe we have more or less all technology in place. So when we look to the different areas, we need something in renewable energy. So we have photovoltaic systems. We have the inverter for that. We have wind turbines. We use hydropower. We use geothermal energy. So this is something, it's ready there. We only have to connect it to the energy storage. So, but also we have energy storage. We have battery storage. We have pump storage. We have hydrogen technology. And also we can use thermal storage. And maybe there are some more ideas. The next point is we need a smart grid. So an intelligent grid, which has communication paths to know where the energy is, if we have enough energy and all this stuff around. Also here we are working on that. And in the smart grid, we need also the microgrids. This is something what we use already at home. If you have a photovoltaic system at home, you try to maybe charge your e-vehicle with that. So it's there. So from technical point of view, we can do it easily. And then for sure, when we look in the area of e-vehicles, we also need charging stations. Now the discussion about using the e-vehicle as storage. So we need bidirectional charging. So it's there. There are already cars on the market who offer that. But there are some missing points like standards or regulation to do that. It makes it not easy, especially when you look to cars. The feed-in of energy in the grid is from nation to nation in Europe different. And the car has to fulfill it because you didn't know where you are with the car. And this is something what is maybe missing in the moment, but this is not from the technology point of view. When we see in the energy efficiency is also a point. We have something ready here. Yeah? We have new technology like wideband gap and all this stuff around. Yeah? We look to heat pumps with gaining energy efficiency. We are working on fuel cell technology. So I think that's coming more and more. Yeah. And then what I mentioned before, I think the backbone is the digitalization. You can call it IoT, whatever. But at the end of the day, it is communication. It is communication between the different devices to bring the energy from the generation via storage towards the consumers where you need it.
Karl, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, technologies are there is what you're saying, but you also touched on infrastructure. What changes are needed in existing energy infrastructure to support an all-electric society? What are the main challenges? You mentioned smart grids, microgrids. You mentioned communications challenges and digitalization. Can you elaborate a little more on that? I find that very interesting.
Yeah, I think we have 4 areas out of my view. So one is the generation of the electricity. The second one is the storage. The third one is the distribution, and then comes the use. So these are clear areas. So this is the flow of the energy. So beginning at the generation, so we have to expand our renewable energy capacity. That is quite clear. In sunny, windy days, like it was, I think, last Sunday, I read in the news that in total Europe, we gain 50 gigawatt more energy only with renewable than we need on that day. But we are not even able to store it. So then we have to store it for days where we don't generate it. That is the second step. So also we have to expand our storage. We need storage, maybe hydrogen storage, battery storage, so short time, long time storage. And to bring the energy, to transport the energy, we have to, let's say, modernize the network in Europe. We have a still old network, which was built not for such environment. So we have to change that. And then for sure, we need more devices which can use this energy. So we have to change maybe from the standard heating system with gas and oil to a heat pump as example. And this is a long way. And when we talk about changing infrastructure, normally it depends on it, but this takes normally up to 50 years. So our distribution network, we change every 50 years, not earlier. Our cabling, our tubes in the streets, we are changing every 50 years, not earlier. So really to fulfill all this, it will take a long time. And I think this we have to do. And nevertheless, in between, we will have some technical issues. What is about the grid stability? We have to do that. And for that, we need storage again. And we have to steer the loads. So to be able to switch off loads if it's needed to stabilize something like that. Then you can imagine again how important communication is. And it has to be real-time communication to get it just in time. So this is a lot of things. And for sure, we have also economy challenges. In the beginning, we have high investment cost to do the change until we get the benefit out of that with the cheap energy. This will take years, up to centuries. And I think that makes it really difficult. And important point should be, out of my view, that the politic has to do some frameworks to come to that. And this has to be stable over centuries, not only for one period where they are elected. I think this is also something we have as challenge. And then for sure, the acceptance of our consumers. It's not there yet in the moment, but we have to talk about it, explain that it will take time. And that is not a switch, which you switch from off to on.
And Karl, how do you bring these many different components and areas of the all-electric society together?
So to bring together these various components, it requires systematic and integrated approach. We as EBV, we can help here on system level and technology level. And we can explain how it works together by showing block diagrams and deciding for the right components. We are a member of different associations as EBV to be in front of the technology trends and to understand where the ways are going through.
Karl, how important are standards? Are you aware of any standardization efforts that we should keep in our sights?
So standards play an essential role. And I believe we have a lot of standards we have already in place. But we have to see how we bring this standard together. So I mentioned before, we have these 4 major blocks: the generation, the storage, the distribution, and the use. And maybe for all we have standards. But now the way is quite a little bit more different. It's more a decentralized generation, even as a decentralized storage somewhere. And we never know how the flow is. In the past, the flow was in one direction, from generation towards to use. But now it's in between, changing. And this even means we have to adapt the standardizations to bring this together, the different needs. And I think here we discuss in different areas already. And I think there are a lot of our customers involved driving the standards to the right use, because they have the knowledge what are the challenges in between and how we bring that back to a standard.
And what's the role of electronics and the realization of the all-electric society?
Electronics is more or less the heart of many technologies and systems. Without that, it will never work. So we need semiconductors, we need software to drive that on top. At the end of the day, the hardware together with the software, they will take care about the monitoring, the control, the integration, to energy productions, the storage and the consumptions. And we need, on one hand, we need power electronics, but also we need a lot of intelligent logic electronics to control, to communicate, and even with this new technologies like artificial intelligence, this will help to make everything much more intelligent than in the past.
Let's talk about sector coupling. It's a key part of the all-electric society, where we're connecting energy with industry, transportation, and buildings. Now, these are all areas that EBV is involved in through its various market segments. I'm curious, does this interconnection make your job easier when it comes to helping customers develop products and choose components? I mean, how does it impact your approach?
Yeah, I think that exactly was a goal when we introduced the market segments. I would say already, I think the first one was automotive more than 20 years ago. I think the point is we have then much more deeper market knowledge, can help the customer much better on the market, and can explain what is the right application or application solution he can use in his device. And on the other hand, we not only have market segments, we have also technology segments. And with the technology segments, we really can help then what are the latest technology which could be used in the application. So I think it's a two-level, it's a vertical approach between market segments and technology segments to help the customer to have the newest technology inside, let's say, his application, and knowing that the application then also fulfills the newest market trends.
There is a lot of talk about more and more electricity consumers, and you also mentioned it. I mean, from electric cars to heat pumps. What role does energy efficiency play in all these considerations? What can the semiconductor industry contribute?
Energy efficiency plays a major role because energy, what you don't have to use, you don't have to generate, which makes it easier. You don't have to storage even. From the technology point of view, we really see that this is the driver for wide band gap. So wide band gap, I mean silicon carbide transistors, gallium nitride transistors, and they will be coming even more in future, I believe. Then you increase the efficiency, you reduce the losses. But there's also another step for me, especially for power application. We are talking about nowadays more changing the grid from AC grid to DC grid. In the past, it was we have a generation which is AC. We transport AC energy until the consumer, and the consumer takes the AC energy and use it for his device. So nowadays, we have photovoltaic. It produces DC. To bring it in the grid, we have to change it to AC. Then somewhere we transport it, and then we bring it maybe to DC back again. So does it really make sense, especially when you look between also the storage, which is DC typically? So it makes maybe sense to use a DC grid that at least will reduce the losses by transforming the energy between AC and DC and vice versa. And this is something what is also in discussion, but also this will take time. What I mentioned before, it's not doable from one year to another. You can imagine our installation at home are all AC based. Until we will have DC in our homes, it will take time. But nevertheless, in industry, it's a little bit easier when you build up a new plant. You can do it. And this is in discussion, but also here are missing standards and all these challenges around, like we described before, are there. But we are working on that too. And I think that is really also a change which is coming for the next century.
Shifting focus a little bit, at least I think we are. I mean, what's your take on the implementation of the all-electric society in a global context? What are the challenges in, let's say, developing countries compared to industrialized countries?
There is a difference. So when we look in developing countries, they need support for new infrastructure. So they don't have any infrastructure, so to build it up. And they need money for that so that they can do that. And also we have to do a technology transfer to help here. When you look in developed countries, it's different like Europe. We have an infrastructure, but that is old. We have to modernize it. Also high investment cost. And then for sure, we have to promote new technologies here. What I mentioned before, it could be wideband gap or it could be DC grids instead of AC grids and all this stuff. So there are a lot of discussion, but we have to work here together, I believe. Challenges are a little bit different, but nevertheless, we have to invest. I think that is a major point and we have to start somewhere.
How do you see the world in 20 to 30 years, Karl, when the concept of the all-electric society has come to pass, has been, let's say, successfully implemented? What do you see as the most important next steps?
So in 20 to 30 years, I believe the world is much cleaner. So we have less CO2 in our air. It's more efficient. And I think it's more technology based. So there are a lot of changes. We will have a transition to more or less only having renewable energies. Maybe we find some additional ones. We will use smart grids. We will use electrical vehicles. And we will have modern buildings with heat pumps and also cooling. You can do cooling with that. It's easily. It will be much more sustainable and environmentally friendly, our lifestyle at the end of the day. I think that is something what I expect at least, and I hope that we will gain it. And maybe we will push out the Earth World Day to autumn timeframe and have it that not in spring already.
Karl, the Electronica Trade Fair, which takes place in Munich in November, is also dedicated to the all-electric society. What do you expect from the fair?
I believe they will show the latest technologies and innovations. And I think it's important to show that the transition to all electricity is possible. And this is what I expect. So I think they will show newest things about renewable energy, storage, the management, electromobility. I think there's so many changes in the moment and it's so fast. It's a good place at least to get, let's say, familiar with all the trends which are coming up and think about that. What is the best way for our customers, what they have to implement in their next devices for the consumers.
Speaking about your customers and what EBV does, will EBV also focus its presence at the fair specifically on the All Electric Society? What will be your highlights at the EBV booth?
Yeah, so let's say, yes, we will focus on All Electric Society. That's clear, yes. So our booth is a little bit special. So we have a booth where we said we would like to have a meet and greet more. It should be a relaxed atmosphere to get in talks about technology and what is coming next. We have less exponents to explain and show something. It's more really the discussion. And for that also we have a lounge. And this lounge has a name, Meet the World, Meet EBV.
That's beautiful. That sounds great. Karl, we've talked about the origins of your passion for technology a couple of times when you joined us in previous episodes. Today, I'd love to learn more about what keeps your passion for technology alive and rekindled over and over again. What does the origin of your continued passion for technology look like? What keeps your fascination alive?
I think especially this topic, All Electric Society, I've tried to push already more than 2 years. And it's really the goal, what we have at the end of the day, the cleaner and the better world, to have a nice life, also not for ourselves, even for our children. I think this is something to come back in the minds. And there was one sentence from my grandfather. He was a farmer. And he said, the farmland is not my own. It's owned from my children. And I think this something fits pretty well to the All Electric Society for me.
I think that's a beautiful closing statement. Thank you, Karl. Thank you for the insights that you've shared with us today, yet again. I mean, it's beautiful and always very informational. And dear listeners, as always, you can find more info in our show notes. Please feel free to subscribe to our podcast, Passion for Technology, on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other popular podcasting platforms. Karl, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mustafa.